The real battlefronts this week, despite what the news media says to fog your brain, concern the economy and fulfilling Donald Trump's campaign promise to make this nation a manufacturing and scientific superpower yet again. Trump's imposition of tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China produced concerted waves of disinformation and howls in the news media about erratic and uncertain blows to an already teetering economy. There was a big stock market sell-off. As Trump said on Thursday, the multinational corporations which inhabit the stock market are globalists, and they will not be doing so well in the new economy geared toward empowering the working and middle classes as Trump promised. Otherwise, the Europeans and the Ukrainians tried to throw nuclear sand in Trump's drive to end the wars in Europe and the Middle East. We covered that extensively on a piece I wrote for the Promethean Action website. Trump cut off both military and intelligence aid to Ukraine and informed them as of Friday that if they don't get their act together for peace, we, meaning the United States, are out of there. They will be left to the pounding the Russians are now doing. I'm Barbara Boyd, and this is your Saturday Wrap. In thinking about the week and all of the headlines, you really have to step back from the news cycle to make sense of anything. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was out this week at the Economic Club of New York and on NBC's Squawk Box, outlining what the administration is doing about the, quote, brittle, quote, fragile, and, quote, already in recession economy they were handed by Joe Biden. As Bessent tells it, Trump asked him during one of his first encounters, how do you get the deficit and debt under control without crashing the economy? And indeed, that is the issue, how to grow the economy. And Bessent says he has been thinking about that ever since. While Wall Street and the City of London went nuts over Trump's tariffs and retaliated by crashing stocks, the UAW and others rejoiced, with Democratic Party fanatic and UAW President Sean Fain rejoicing that Trump was saving the automobile industry by forcing car-making operations back into the United States from Canada and Mexico. Honda just announced that they're opening their new plant in Indiana and not in Mexico. Bessent outlined the completely unbalanced economy we presently have and on which the Trump administration is performing major transformations. China is now the world's main manufacturing economy, with 30% of the world's manufacturing there compared to our measly 16%. They build all the world's ships. While we used to lead that category, we now build none. They produce most of the life-saving pharmaceuticals we consume and almost all of the vitamins. That's a major national security threat. Our leading exports are crude petroleum and soybeans. The latter crop, soybeans, is what the big ag cartels call farming, having long ago destroyed family farms and the once great production of all of our major food crops here in the United States. 25% of our GDP currently comes from government jobs of one kind or another in Washington, D.C. The top 10% of income owners in this country consume 50% or more of the consumer goods in the country as the middle and working classes struggle to survive day to day. While the British, their European vassals, and our Washington traders scream that Trump is destroying the post-World War II rules-based order with his moves for peace in Ukraine, that order died in 2008 when its economic system crashed and burned. It has never recovered. Instead, the elites have been feeding off what we produce in a minimal fashion, transferring huge amounts of wealth to themselves through such mechanisms as COVID, in order to keep their power based on the illusion that being rich means you have done something with your life. When you use the word billionaire, there is a huge difference between Elon Musk, who makes rockets, cars, and all sorts of new technologies to power the economy, and Malthusian idiots like Bill Gates, who exist to pleasure themselves and their friends. Now Trump is changing all of this, and that is where the so-called separate issues of war and peace, the bloated and corrupt government, the debt and the deficit, the drug and migrant slave trade come together. As Besson outlined it in his speech, we have to use tariffs and punitive and favorable tax policies to force the reshoring of manufacturing and to invite foreign manufacturers into the country. We have to deregulate to ensure that new energy sources, like nuclear power, can be built again in this country. China is outpacing us in building nuclear plants to power their economy. They are catching up on the development of fusion, the unrivaled and perpetual energy source which can transform the entire world's economy. We have to massively produce energy and electricity to power our industry and AI. We have to force banks to loan to Main Street again, ending the corrupt federal policy, the Federal Reserve policy, in which they park their huge money pools at the Federal Reserve in order to earn interest and pay shareholders without lending to the real physical economy. We have to end the addiction to government jobs and get the private sector humming with productive enterprise. That is what the Treasury Secretary said in his profound speech. You can only see this aspect of things if you think about the economy as a physical organism of supply chains and process sheets and how production actually happens without fixating on money or finances. Lyndon LaRouche created a whole science examining the dynamics of this physical economic reality, and the result was very successful forecasts as to how economics would go. Far more successful than anybody else. If you see the unity of effect, you can see how all of this fits together. If we end wars and denuclearize, as Trump proposes, the huge defense budget shrinks down to size and is repurposed to invent new technologies for productive purposes to grow the economy, like the Golden Dome to protect against nuclear missiles, which will spin off new technologies for production. The same is true of the quest to colonize the moon and Mars, which has the ancillary benefit of firing the imaginations of our young people with a sense of purpose and mission. If we have people working at human wages at good jobs, the need for Obama's expansion of Medicaid, which envisioned a permanent class of poor people, becomes much, much less. If we get healthy by ending the drug plague and the poisoning of our population, our healthcare costs go way down. This is what the budget cutters and cost accountant fanatics can't see and fail to take into account. The globalists, however, can already see what has begun to happen, and that is why they are screaming and scheming to bring about Trump's failure, blaming the depression which will happen if he fails on him. Already, energy costs have decreased by 15%, Bassett says. The American-born, Trump emphasized in his Oval Office remarks on Friday, got 284,000 new jobs. By contrast, the foreign-born component of the labor force decreased by 87,000. With respect to the wars, Ukraine and Europe still want to end Trump's quest for peace. As Trump says, he is having more problems with them than with Russia. And if they are not prepared to make peace, the United States will totally abandon them. Trump ended certain intelligence shares and weapons sales to Ukraine this week. Next week, there will be negotiations with Ukraine and Saudi Arabia, and we'll see what happens. The war in the Middle East is also at a crossroad, with Israel threatening to go back into Gaza and no resolution as to the future of that enclave and its rebuilding. The Arabs will finalize their proposal for Gaza next week, and we'll cover that in depth. In Syria, as could be predicted, the ruling al-Qaeda veterans are now slaughtering the Alawite Christians in a completely predictable genocide and ethnic cleansing, which we can't cover up. In Lyndon LaRouche's Science of Physical Economics, whole aspects of which the Trump administration has now embraced, science, the means by which we alter nature in order to make more life happy for human beings, and classical art, the study of the most effective and beautiful communications about man and nature and the meaning of life, are not separate worlds. They are the tools for the exercise of individual human creativity, which drives all economies and all human progress. It is the power God gave us uniquely, the nurturing and development of which is the purpose of our government's protection of the general welfare. There's a lot of talk these days about American exceptionalism and our national mission today, much of which is inspiring, but most of which is just that, talk. Tonight, Tony Papper will reprise a very significant speech LaRouche made about this quite a while ago. The speech is called Our Manifest Destiny and presents the true history and purpose of our republic. It is particularly relevant today given Europe's replay of all of the reasons our founders left it. Join Tony tonight both for LaRouche's truly inspiring discussion and the ideas which flow from it. I'll be back on Monday to introduce you to the coming week. Thanks very much for listening.
Thanks for watching. Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at prometheanaction.com.